Man, oh man, you don't know how nice it feels to crack one open after a long week from work, peeps. Hope you guys had a great week or weekend. If you're listening to this, it's probably a Tuesday. For me, it's a Thursday for me and Sean Lavery, who's going to be my special guest for this week. He's filling in last minute rescheduled, but excited to have Sean on my podcast. But yeah, man, it's been a hectic week putting out 10 hours of work in 4 days. So I'm tired, super tired. But, work must go on. Super excited about tomorrow. It's going to be, for me, it's going to be Friday. And I plan to spend the day fishing. Don't know where I'm going to go yet. Don't know if I'm going to get up early. But somewhere, somehow, I'm going to make it to a lake and go fishing because I'm excited about that. I'm going to take my drone with me. I'm going to take my GoPros. And I'll see if I can put up some nice content for you guys. If you guys are into the whole social media thing, remember you can follow me on Instagram on the Bass Kayak and Beers, Facebook as well, Bass Kayak and Beers. You can also follow our mother network here, Paddle and Fin, on also Facebook and Instagram under Paddle and Fin. And keep up with the latest updates that we have. And today, again, we're going to have Sean Lavery. He runs the Noob Show, the Bass Fishing for Noobs. It comes out every Monday, I think. Sean will correct me on that if it is not. And it's actually the most popular episode here on Paddle and Fin. For good reason, not just because sex sells and Sean Lavery has this boyish gush look. Yes, he is, very ranked in the, the ratings for the 50 to 60-year-old female audience is through the roof with his podcast. But it's not just that. It is also great content. So proud to have Sean on my show. And yeah, maybe some of the guys or girls from Paddle and Fin will join too in a minute. We sent out the invite. But if not, it's going to be me and Sean. So it's going to be a great episode. Before we go to commercials, go check out my sponsor, Douglas Rod. Go to douglasoutdoors.com to check out their full lineup of LRS, X-Matrix, and fly fishing rods. So quick commercial and we'll bring Sean right in. Sean, buddy, how you doing, man?
Good, man. It's good to see you. Good to be back here again.
Thank you for coming on the podcast. I cracked open a beer, but I need to get a sip of it, man. I need a.
That's why I just got off my on-call week. Once every 4 weeks, I'm on call, and that was last week. So
what do you do for a living? Sorry,
I'm an IT guy. So oddly enough, at a retirement community. So
there you go. That's why
the 50 to 60-year-old ladies, I know how to.
Yeah. They're like, that's a Sean Lavery guy.
I wondered if that's where, if that's where,
like, we're gonna take the IT boy into the IT man.
That's why their computers just break all the time, man. I don't know what it is.
Spill some coffee in it, Get that.
And maybe that's where all the ads that come on my show come from. Like I've gone back and listened to different shows, and I'm like, where did that ad come from?
I know. I had one of I don't want to say fan because one of my listeners, I should say, that's a better term, more accurate term, but messaged me says like, why am I getting commercial for Tampax?
Exactly.
So you remember that I went off on a group chat about that, and Brian Schiller was so for those that aren't listening, I piss off Brian Schiller more than anybody else in the paddle and fin community. I don't even know how that guy likes me so much because I piss him off. I've managed to piss off. I remember one time, God, that was so funny. I said something and it went the wrong way, and it wasn't a joke, but it wasn't anything. Anyways, it went the wrong way, and I called him, and I have never heard Brian Schiller curse at me like he did that day. He was so mad. I'm like, I'm fired. I'm going to have to start my own podcast. I am completely fired. This guy is going to just give me the axe. So it is funny. But yes, I remember that. He said, why are you getting Tampax commercials? You were on the group chat. I messaged like, why the hell are we getting Tampax commercial? Turns out it's whatever, you're doing with your phone. So as a listener, if you're doing something with your phone, that's kind of like the ad. So I went up to the guy because he has, I think he has one wife and one or two daughters. I think one daughter. So it's like, maybe one of your daughters or your wife was using your phone. And that's how we come up, because it's weird. Big Brother's always watching.
Right.
So
I get like Saks Fifth Avenue and stuff like that. I'm like, where is that coming from,
I know, right? It's kind of weird, but anyways, so
Yeah, man.
I don't know. That's what it is. How you been doing, man? Doing all right?
Doing very good. Yep. I just hit my 1 year anniversary at the retirement community where I'm at now, and things are going good there. It's gave me a lot of time to fish this year, which I was happy about. I hit the water more this year than I have, ever by far. So, tried to get out twice a week if I could, and you know, when Ryan and I, kept track of started keeping track of our fish catches this year, I made it a goal to try and smash my record from last year, and I obliterated it. I was feeling really good about it until Brad Hicks posted his angler, I think 1,000 catches this year. I was like, oh crap, I'm not anywhere near that. So,
Show off, Brad. What a jerk. Nah,
congrats, Brad, on
guy.
that. By the way, yeah, I was like, oh man, I got like 250 bass this year, and then he's like, I got 1,000. I'm like, what?
What kind of jerk does that, right? Nah, he's a good guy. A great
Definitely.
angler too.
Yep.
A great river angler too. But yeah, rumor has it that's what Ryan left. He was like, no, I can't be. The new guy is kicking my tail. I better leave now before it gets any worse. So now we love Ryan Milford. Talking about that, so for those that don't know, Ryan Milford was the one that kind of started the Bass Fishing for Noobs. He had his own podcast, and then Brian Schiller, who's trying to conquer the world like every white man out there, is slowly taking over. The podcast community brought Brian Schiller in. Brought Ryan Milford in, and then he continued with the Bass Fishing for Noobs segment, which has been the most popular segment. Pretty much on Paddle and Fin, and then you joined him. I remember the day you joined him. I wasn't with Paddle and Fin yet. You were not at all what I imagined him listening to. Not that I was imagining what you were listening to. So that's kind of creepy. But when I say it's like this, is not what I thought I was gonna. The guy that I thought I was gonna be listening to. But you guys had a chemistry together. You have a great show. Ryan has since then moved on to other things. I know. Fishing, as much as we love it, and doing the podcast takes it's kind of told on you. It sounds like easy, but you see a lot of people just kind of burnt out.
It really does, and there was definitely times, especially when Ryan left, and I was like, wow, I'm gonna have to swing this solo for a while. That I kind of contemplated bailing too, and it's weird that I can have like a week where I struggle to find a guest, and I'll finally get one, and then I'll be like, I just don't feel like recording tonight, and then I'll go and do it, and then I'm like, wow, that was an amazing conversation. Like it totally, after I do it and get to have those conversations, then at the end of it, I'm like, why was I dreading that so much? I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot of stuff. Talked to great people, and it almost after every time when I'm done, I'm like, that was that keeps me going. So I don't know if you have experienced that at all, but yeah, there's definitely times where I'm like, especially if it's a long day or, where I know, I've scheduled to record tonight. And, I kind of, up until the point where I'm recording, I kind of am dreading it. And then once I get there and start talking, and then, then an hour and a half goes by, and I've, had a great conversation with some amazing person, and, it just totally makes it worth it. So.
No, and Bass Fishing for Noob to me was kind of a big inspiration to start the podcast. Because I learned a lot from listening to you guys. And then I figured and I've said so people that are listening are probably tired of me hearing this, but I don't come from a bass fishing culture. I picked up bass fishing in my, God, I hate to say this, but in my mid 40s. I'm approaching my late 40s now. So I've only been bass fishing per se about 3 or 4 years. So one of the things that I got started was like, I saw what you guys are doing. I didn't want to compete. But I thought if I can get people, so I don't have a lot of friends that do bass fishing, and even if they do, it's kind of more like the recreational thing where I only do it, 5 times a year. Not like you and I do, like try to put it out there more and more and more. Like every week, at least I try to do it every week. So it was hard to learn, and it's hard even with YouTube. It's hard to learn by yourself. So I figured if I can get a podcast. I can start bringing people in to talk about it. And I started with the Bass Kayak and Beers. Then I did the real life, which is kind of life stories, which is kind of what I like to do. I like to talk to people about life, not just fishing, but people in the kayak fishing community. get to know those great anglers and the great content creators. What is kind of like the day in the life of those people. And then I started doing the kayak fishing 101, and that for me was just to like get people to talk about it, because you got the on the show. There's a lot of anglers that won't tell you their secrets, but once you get them off air, they'll spill the beans on a lot of them, and you learned a lot. And I've seen your progression as an angler from when you started to where you are now. And how does the podcast help you to become a better angler?
I mean, I have learned so much, and it just helps me try new things and not to. I was the same way as you. I watched a billion YouTube videos, but you can only learn so much, and you don't. I never had that feel for certain things, and I had to really, have someone talk me through certain things, just like dragging a jig on the ground, and counting rocks. You never like just watching a YouTube video. You can watch a guy, try and work a jig a million times, but until you go and do it and feel it and have someone walk you through what you should be feeling, and okay, did you feel that? Okay, that's where it transitions from chunk rock to gravel, and that's a good place to fish, because you fish those transitions and stuff like that. I would never have learned on my own, and when you have someone walk you through that, and talk to all these people who have done that for so long, and now they're kind of like the master at it, so they're passing on what they know. And I hope to pass on half the knowledge that I've gained. Hopefully, I've started this year. I've really started trying to fish with more people locally. I've met quite a few different people that I've started fishing with. I have quite a few now fishing buddies that I was so I fished by myself for so long just because I was kind of either embarrassed to ask somebody, because I didn't want to come across as that guy who I don't want to steal your spot. I don't want to, I just want to go and learn. And if I can watch and learn by, watching somebody who knows what they're doing, do it. I mean, that's how I learn the quickest and the most. So, and just recently I've really started doing that. And the podcast has helped me do that, because I've met, you don't think of Central PA as a big place for professional anglers, but there are quite a few big name sticks that are right in my area, and I've got to meet a couple of them locally. Twice now I've missed out on fishing the Hobie event. That's been half hour.
Yeah, man, Susquehanna. That year was amazing. Last year was awesome.
No,
yeah. This season was awesome.
Yeah, and the numbers that those guys put up too is amazing. But I want to do that next year, and this year I was on call. That is the only reason I didn't do it that weekend, because I'm like, I'm not going to pay that entry fee and then be out in the water and get called in. That would be awful.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason why I didn't do it this year. I had saved up the money, and I was like, I'm just going to try it just to go meet some of these amazing people that I talk to all the time, because they were all there. It was like the world came to my backyard. Now this year, I've had quite a few people talk to me about possibly staying at my house. So, because I'm literally half an hour from, the southern border of that tournament. So, I've talked to quite a few people. I have one guest room, but I said, I got a huge basement with plenty of space. If you want to bring an air mattress and crash in my basement, you can. So it'll be interesting. I'm wondering who's going to show up at my place now.
You didn't even know. That's funny. Yeah, the Susquehanna, man. I think of all the tournaments this year, and I'm a huge fan of watching, following tournaments. There was a couple of standouts. The Trinity River, KBF Trinity River chain, the Saturday was amazing. Just watching Guillermo Gonzalez edge out Jody Quinn, who had 109 inches in 17 minutes before closeout. Guillermo Gonzalez puts out 110.
Right.
That was, I'm sorry, amazing. The Mass Masters. And the good thing about that tournament is they forgot, or they purposely they didn't turn off the leaderboard. So you got to watch it, man. For us as anglers, I was like, that's awesome. Not only that, Matthew Scotch put 100 inches in the first hour. I thought that was done. I'm like, it's done. And then watching Jody Quinn, and Christine Fisher did a great job too. I think those were the top four. And I think we're the top four for Sunday too. Matthew Scott wound up winning Sunday. So big shout out to him. But that Saturday was one of the best tournaments I've seen. The obviously the Bassmaster, not the Bassmaster, the Bass Nation Kayak Series, the Classic or the Championship, whatever they call it, Possum Kingdom. That was super exciting. But to me, the Susquehanna, it wasn't the big numbers that you saw in those two previous tournaments I just mentioned, but it was the fact that anybody can go from the 15th spot to the first spot with calling 3 or 4 inches. Like it was
Right.
crazy. Usually you see like top five and everything kind of tapers up dramatically. But everybody, like in the top 20, was in striking distance of
Right.
winning that thing. That to me was exciting. That tournament was more exciting than any 100-inch one tournament that I've seen.
Right. And for so many anglers to have 100+ inches and for it to come down to an inch on top of that just tells you how good that fishery was at that particular time. I mean, I fish that river all the time, and I just caught my first 20-inch fish this year. So um, I'm still learning, obviously, and those guys know what they're looking for, where to go, and to find those fish. But it is an amazing fishery. I'm blessed to live 15 minutes from the part closest to me. But super excited to try all those different places. I have never really traveled far because I have it so close, and but now this past year, I started traveling north further, up into that area and maybe even beyond. The Kayak Anglers of Central PA is the tournament series that I fished this year, and they have Middle Susquehanna and upper where it actually joins in with the what's the other river up there? I'm drawing a blank on it right now, and then the lower Susquehanna. So there's 3 different river events, and it's as much as it's the same, there's a lot of differences. So that helped me learn a lot about fishing new places and what's the same versus what's different, where to start, that kind of thing. I've learned a lot from that. And I think the Hobie event was on what they call the Middle Susquehanna, so kind of Harrisburg and north. So I got to fish one event up there this year, and then 2 other. I fished in that area twice. That wasn't a tournament, just to kind of learn and get my feet wet up there, so that maybe next year I can actually try the Hobie thing and actually have a shot at doing okay. So
Did you are you gonna pull the like Brad Hicks and just fish rivers
river
now?
events? No. I still now that's interesting too, because I've had a lot more luck on the river this year. So
Yeah.
that's why I kept going back, because the lakes that I fished since COVID hit have been so pressured that the bite has gotten really tough on them. So that's why I kind of gravitated to the river, because I was doing so much better. The quality of fish and the number of fish that I was catching was just that much better than at the lakes. Now, the one lake that I kind of fished more this year, it was drained a few years ago because they were working on the dam. So it's just recovering. So the fish there aren't huge. But because a lot of people kind of shied away because they think that there's no fish in there, that made it be a little less pressured than some of the other lakes that I fished. And so even though that was more where I called it my like training lake, because I could go try new things there. Wasn't catching huge fish, but I was catching fish. So I'd learn what the bite feels like on a chatterbait or a Ned rig, and try those, get comfortable with the things that I want to learn, the techniques that I want to learn. So that
What's
was
been
something.
your favorite podcast episode this year?
That's a good question. Probably what I learned the most from was I did a crankbait episode with Matt
Craig
Gibson.
Dye?
We did Craig Dye last year.
Oh yeah, that was last year. Yeah.
Yep, that was the only reason why I didn't have him back on, and I think I will have him back on, because I actually I talked to him and he's like, yeah, anytime you want to come back, I want me to come back on and have a
Cool
refresher.
dude, man.
Definitely. And we ended up with Matt Gibson. We did a tube episode with him where he talked about the stupid tube, and Milford fell in love with that. That's what his go-to technique was this year, and I actually started having a good bit of success with that as well. But then it wasn't until we had Matt on to talk about crankbaits that I really started getting into crankbaiting, and the river just came alive for me. because I had done it before. I didn't have a good crankbait rod when I first tried it, and then early last year I bought a crankbait rod off a guy on Facebook Marketplace, and that just for whatever reason it gave me the confidence to throw it, and man, my catches just went through the roof. I don't know what that and the popper, the Rico popper. I know Brad talks about that too, and it was I don't know what it is about that one either. I threw Rebels and all sorts of different poppers before, but it wasn't until I got that Rico that's like crazy mad expensive. But I there was one Saturday I went out fishing, and I was out there, first light, and I saw fish breaking the top, and so I'm like, I'm gonna throw top water, and I looked through my box, and the only thing I had was that expensive popper, and I'm like, well, it's expensive, I don't really want to lose it, but I'm gonna just try it, and I caught like 10 fish in an hour, and I was like, this is crazy. And then from there, I started throwing it on the river, and I just picked the right time of year. It was like the mayfly hatch on the river, and that top of the popper was just lights out. It was just fish after fish. I could almost call my shot, and it was hard to put that down. Then as the mayfly season ended, and that it started to slow down that top water bite. I kept going back to it. I'm like, it's got to work. It's got to work. It was so much fun. But so that was a huge thing. But yeah, Matt Gibson got me into the crankbaiting hardcore, and that was probably the episode that I learned the most from this year.
Yeah, and that was a good episode. And I think talking about crankbaits, I think that's one of the techniques that really benefits from having its own setup. Like the right reel and the right rod with it. If you don't, there's so many missed hook sets when you don't have the right reel and the right rod. And you can say that about any technique. But really, I think crankbaits, just because of the dynamic of it, you need to get that bait out put as much distance away from, as far away from you to get it to that sweet spot the longest. I think that benefits from the rod. And then the reel, I think you need a reel that's going to help you throw that, it's going to facilitate you getting the most out of that long cast.
Yes.
And then the rod, just having the right rod that's going to able to allow that fish enough flexibility to allow that fish to swallow that treble hook, and yet with enough stiffness to kind of like have it pinned down without ripping it out of its mouth.
Right. And oddly enough, I know you throw chatterbaits a lot, right? Or occasional. Yeah.
Way more than I should probably.
I started throwing the chatterbait on that rod too, and even though it's the single hook, for some reason it kept them pinned. And I had been throwing my chatterbaits on a medium heavy fast action tip before that, and I lost a lot of fish. And it wasn't until I switched to that medium action rod or that moderate action rod that I started really landing a lot more chatterbait fish. Yeah. And I don't know why. It wasn't like the hook was like ran through the roof of their mouth or anything, but it just kept them pinned for whatever reason.
That reminds me, you guys had an episode, and I think it was either this year or last year, because now with COVID, I can't even tell when a year ended and a year started. I mean, the last 2 years just a blur to me. It's just, I don't even know.
It's been a crazy time.
Yeah. I can't, there's no timeline in the last 2 years, there's no, this year we did that. It's like, I don't even know. But anyways, you had, I forgot his first name. I think his last name is Paris. Great dude, by the way. Great dude. Very charismatic dude. He was talking about the rod, and I was listening to that on my way. I was going to Eagle Mountain Lake, and I think I was fishing that tournament for KBF that I was talking about that had Guillermo Gonzalez winning by 110. What he was talking about, where you were asking him, I remember you were asking, that's one of the ones that stand out. You were asking him, how does he use a rod? He used like a medium rod. It's like, how do you use that for a jackhammer when, it vibrates too much? And one of the things that I know about the chatterbait that was interesting is because, and this is no knock on Paris. Paris is a great angler. He's won some tournaments. But going by what he was saying, he was using kind of like and again, I don't want to be insulting. I'm not insulting his gear, but he was using a lesser. God, how could I say this without sounding like a jerk? Like a lesser quality rod. we had some more flexibility, and that's the difference. Those rods actually tend to be better for chatterbait, and the
Hmm.
reason for that is because has more flexibility on it. It
Right.
has it allows the fish to swallow that hook and get him pinned down. And the reason for that, I think a lot of people don't know. The reason why it's so hard to set the hook on a chatterbait, it's because when a fish is very aggressive and swallows it whole, you have to remember there's a blade that's gonna rub against the mouth. It's gonna force him to open it, and it's gonna actually lessen the ability of the hook to penetrate the mouth because that blade is actually forcing its way up. That's why it's so complicated with a chatterbait.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people don't understand that the best hook sets that you get on a chatterbait it's where they're not swallowing it whole, when they're just kind of like getting for the tail of your chatterbait, and then that blade doesn't get in the way. But that was a
Right.
really good episode, and I was
Yeah.
listening to it. And I'm like, yeah, that's why Paris is having so much success. He's using a rod that is people don't think of it as a great rod for chatterbait, but it actually is because of the flexibility and because of the action in it.
But I
What
ended
a
up.
lot of those graphite rods that are cheaper in quality actually tend to be better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the one I'm throwing on. It's a Cast King, Cast King Speed Demon
Yeah,
moderate rod, and I actually started throwing the chatterbait on it by more because I forgot my what I normally throw my chatterbait rod. I had been throwing my chatterbait on. It was a tournament, and Jake Harshman, another one of the local guys here that helped me out a
and a
lot.
jackhammer advocate.
Yes, he's like, go to this place and throw a jackhammer. And dummy
Lo and
me, I
behold,
drove an hour and a half away, got up there, and I'm like, oh, my chatterbait rod. All I have is the rod I've been using for my crankbait, so I'm going to try it. And I came within an inch of winning that tournament. And I had one of my best days. I think I had 86 inches that day. Um, by far one of my best tournament finishes and everything. And it was almost every fish I caught was on a chatterbait on that casting rod. So, and I was just amazed that I think it was just the flexibility of that rod.
yeah.
It's not an expensive rod, and it would just keep them pinned. They come towards you, they go away from you. Whatever it was, it had just enough tension to keep that hook pinned that they couldn't throw it. So yeah, it definitely makes a big difference. My rod arsenal is definitely on the cheaper side. I'm starting to upgrade. I just got my first St. Croix Victory rod um, like 3 weeks ago, and I've only had it on the water once and got skunked. I had like 2 hours to fish, and I went out knowing it would be tough. But I'm looking forward. I actually am off a half day tomorrow too, so I'm going to hit the water at lunch and see if I can put that Victory rod to work and get a fish on it. So.
You want to do a one-on-one tournament? Honestly,
I'm going out from well, hopefully probably 12 Eastern until 4 Eastern. The sun goes down so fast here; it's crazy.
yeah, it's crazy. But back in the Northeast, man, I love New York. I love New York City. I love to visit on winter. What I hate about winter, it's like at 4 o'clock. I'm like, Jesus Christ, it's already night here. What the heck?
Right? Yeah, I leave for work in the morning. It's dark, and I get home and it's dark. It's just yeah. I'm like, where did my day go?
Yeah,
But
it's not always fun.
no, but it's and that makes definitely shortens my fishing time.
Yeah.
But I hope to have 4 hours. So I didn't catch a fish at all in December last year. So I'm hoping that I can get at least one December fish this year. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, no, December up there, it's got to be a lot tougher than it is. I mean, December for me is awesome. I love December in Texas. I don't know what it is. Once February comes up, I think that's when the bite gets kind of like that's when it actually gets colder here in Texas.
Okay.
February, it's kind of like historically that's the coldest month, February. So
Okay.
that's the bite gets kind of tough. But December usually it's on fire.
Hmm. Oh man, that sounds nice. It's not horrible here, but
Yeah,
it definitely slows down a lot. So I'm having that's what the last couple of guests that I've talked on. I've really focused on kind of that cold water fishing because that's now the kind of the what I'm moving into, and I'm looking forward to. I fished a lot in cold weather last year, but I didn't know what I was doing, so I wasted a lot of time. I put a lot of time on the water, but I didn't know what I was doing, so I wasn't productive. It was frustrating. So this year I feel like I have a lot more knowledge, so I'm kind of looking forward to it. I've learned a lot more about just the river from this year fishing it so much. So I know kind of the areas I want to target, and I'm thinking it's going to be at least a little more productive than it was last year. So
Yeah, that's the thing about you gotta like, how do you call this? I'm trying to figure out the phrase. Kind of say walk the walk and talk the talk, but that's not really it. What I wanted to say, but basically, it's like you gotta pay your dues. That's what I want to say.
yeah, you got
You
to
know,
put the time in.
you got to put the time in. It's not gonna happen overnight. That's the beauty of it. You know, when you struggle, that's where you kind of like have to figure out what is it that's going on and what's not working and what you got to do. So in order to, like you said, you waste a lot of time, but you need to waste that time in order to get better. If you're not
Mm-hmm.
wasting the time, you're not learning. Um, and that goes with a lot of things in life. You know, it's, if with the harder it gets, if you're really committed, the better you're gonna be in the long run. You know, when things don't come easy, that's when you really appreciate when you do, when you are able to, you know, get to a level where you feel comfortable with. When you know it took you a lot of work and you really appreciate what you learned, you don't take it for granted.
Yeah, and I try to constantly just remind myself of where I came from. 2 years ago, I the growth that I've learned and made in the 2 years kind of since I started really fishing a lot and doing the podcast and stuff. It's that's what I always say. I can go back on my phone and look at the pictures of the fish I was catching, and I'd be holding up like a 5-inch bass and super happy because that was the first fish I caught in like 2 weeks of fishing. And I still love every tug on my line. That I'm
Yeah.
still like a kid, and it makes me happy when I catch any fish. But um, it's definitely not. I don't get skunked as often anymore, and you know, and that's what I even when I have the really tough days, that's what I remind myself of is just that and one thing I've learned is that through talking to a lot of these people too is that everybody has tough days. Even the professionals have days, and you don't always
Hmm.
hear about those days, but that doesn't mean they don't have them.
Yeah.
And that was a big learning thing for me too is to because I used to get so frustrated. I'm like, well, nobody else seems like they're getting skunked as often as I'm getting skunked. But and as I learned more and more, I started skunking less too. So,
Yeah.
uh, but
It's that progression when you go out 10 days, you get skunked like 8 or 9 of them. And then that gets lessened and lessened. And then it comes to a point where you're like, okay, I'm getting skunked once out of 10 days now.
yep,
So it's a satisfying feeling, man. It's a feeling of accomplishment. You appreciate it, and you value it. You know, I'm
abs-
kind of glad it doesn't come easy, just because you learn to appreciate it more.
right. And if it came easily, everybody would be doing it.
Yeah,
And I want the sport to grow, but I also don't want my lake to be completely filled every Saturday. I do like the fact that I can go and get away and have peaceful time on the water. Um, so I do value that as well, and it definitely is stress relief for me. So when I can go to places and have, oh, that's kind of why I like fishing in the river in the winter now because I'm one of the only crazy people out there. I have almost the whole Susquehanna to myself half the time. So I definitely enjoy that aspect of it too. So
that's awesome. And let me ask you this: who's been your favorite guest? Not necessarily your favorite episode, but who's been your favorite guest? Who you enjoy talking to the most?
probably Jody Queen, and
Yeah,
only because he is the top of the sport, but he could be your neighbor, man. He
yeah,
talks to you like he's known you forever. He's and he's the same guy, whether he's standing on the national stage or he's chatting with me, some guy from rural PA in his basement. He's the same guy to every person he meets, just
yeah.
genuine, willing to share. He's just good people, and but yet a wealth of knowledge, and he knows what he's doing. He puts the time in. you know he's an ambassador for the sport.
Yes.
I don't know what more to say about him. He checks every box. He's good. He's a stick, a hammer, but he's also the most humble person you could ask for. So
And full of knowledge too, man.
oh yeah,
Says
yeah,
Susquehanna King right there.
yeah, definitely.
Honestly.
And that's when you talk about spilling some juice off air, he gave me 2 or 3 tips that were lightning like right away. Like I went out and tried it and I was like, holy cow, he knows what he's talking
When the and I can't remember. I want to say it was the Real Down. I can't remember was the Real Down or KBN. But when he won the Susquehanna River, not this year, last year, the breakdown that he did on, and again I can't remember what show it was. I want to say the Real Down. I'm pretty sure it's a Real Down. I think
about. I
Dan
think
Perry was
so.
still there.
Yep,
Yeah,
yeah.
the breakdown he did about using the spinners and switching out the Colorado River, and instead of hitting the bank, hitting kind of like the center of the middle of the river, which is completely what you wouldn't think to do. And I'm not a big river guy, so I don't, uh, I've learned so much listening to that episode. Every time Jody Quinn is on any episode talking about techniques, I am recording this because it is gold, man. It is podcast gold. I encourage anybody out there, if you see Jody Quinn on any podcast, if you really want to learn how to fish, listen to it because the guy is full of knowledge, charismatic. What I love most about Jody Quinn is not just having him on the podcast; it's talking to him after we record, man.
Yep.
I finished recording. I can't wait to finish recording so I can just lay back and talk to Jody Quinn like like he's been your drinking buddy for the last 20 years.
Right.
He's just a joy to talk to, man. He is. It's awesome to talk to. He's a great guy, very charismatic.
And
So yeah,
like
I couldn't agree more.
his passion for the sport just comes out too. Like
Yes.
when even in that laid back conversation, he'll start talking about, oh well, I just want to see it grow, and if I do this and I spend an extra half hour at the ramp and talk to this guy, he's going to go home and he's going to have that fire or that spark that lights him, and it's just going to help our sport grow. And that's exactly what our sport needs, is ambassadors like that, and he is
Yeah.
definitely one of them. So
Definitely. You also have one of my all-time favorite content creators, Gene Jensen, the Fluke Master. How was that episode? You enjoyed recording with him?
I was starstruck the whole time, and
I know, man. I'll be a fanboy right there.
I had wanted to talk to him for a long, long time,
Yeah.
and finally, Brian helped me get the hookup. I went through Duke Westcamp actually, and Duke got me in touch with him, and he was like, "Oh, sure, I'll come on." And he's a Braves fan. I'm an Atlanta Braves fan, so we kicked it off right there, and it was just gold. And we went over one of the most basic techniques. I think we just did Texas rigging, and it's a basic technique, but that man could write a 30 volume series on Texas rigging. He knows that much about it. So that was another awesome episode. Just like I said, I was totally starstruck the whole time. I'm like, I've watched this guy so many videos that he's done, and to finally actually get to talk to him was really neat.
No, I have a lot of respect for Gene Jensen. I actually, first bass I ever caught in Texas was a Texas rig, and was right after binge watching a bunch of Fluke Masters, and especially talking about Texas rig. And I immediately tagged them on my first. That was, I think, my first Instagram post on bass fishing. And I was like, thanks to this guy, I learned. And the good thing, before I even met Gene Jensen, I had questions, and I would message him on Instagram, and I would not encourage everybody. You probably get mad at me because everybody, whoever's listening to him, message him. No, but really, he would answer, man. And I appreciate it because, he's a busy guy. He does a lot of things,
Right.
just within the social media and fishing. And he would ask me, and I told him, hey, I remember when I got my first fish finder, I did not know how to reach a fish finder. And Instagram, YouTube kind of helped me, but I had some other questions. And I would message him to send a screenshot of like, this is what I'm seeing, man. What am I missing? And he would message me short answers, but short, sweet, and to the point. It's like, this is what you should be looking for, but this is what you're seeing. Pay attention to this. So I really appreciate what he does. And shout out to him though. He's doing something right now. I just saw it on work today, and I haven't been able to watch the whole full video of it, but I'm sure I will. He's doing promoting, trying to help the refugees families coming in from I think it was Afghanistan, somewhere in war torn countries.
Okay.
to help him out. So it goes to show you, Gene is just pure heart, on and off the water. So a great dude. I would love to have him on the podcast sometimes. Not talking about his life, because he's also. I've heard a podcast where he talked about how he got into doing the whole social media and Fluke Master, and I was super interested
Yeah,
in
he's
how
come from.
that
He
came
was like
about.
a X-ray technician or something, if I
Yeah,
remember correctly. And
yeah,
he came a long way. So, and we had Chad Hoover on, and I
yeah.
was fully expecting that episode to go a completely different way. When I invited him to come on, I was like, hey, can you just go over, he takes tons of people
I
fishing.
remember that
So,
episode.
and I was like, hey, just come on and talk about the most common mistakes you see noobs making, because I feel like that would be something good to learn, because people might think, oh, well, I do that all the time. This is how I can improve. And that almost turned into like a mindset episode. Like it went completely a different direction. And, it was cool. And it was, not necessarily about any technique or anything, but it was just neat to listen to another person, pillar of the sport, go through what his mindset is and, what makes him tick and what makes him different than other people. So it was unexpected. And I think Ryan was still with me then, and we hung up and he left, and we both kind of looked at each other and like, what just happened?
He and I have a lot of respect for Chad Hoover. What he's done. I had Ryan Lambert on my podcast, and there's some dislike over there. But even Ryan Lambert was talking about, when I asked him, like, who do you think is in the Mount Rushmore of kayak fishing?
Yep, I
Because I
remember.
like to talk. I think I know the sport is new, but I like talking about subjects like that. I think in the way as the sport progresses, you have to think about what the founding fathers of these sports are. We are at that point where it's kind of like building and taking a life of its own, and kind of remember the people that got us there. And regardless of what you have to say about Chad Hoover's personality, and he does have a personality.
He freely admits that. Yep.
Yeah, he has an ego, and a lot of times it's his way or the highway, and he's not shy about it. I respect it. I don't always agree with it. I don't always agree with the method of it, but I respect him, and I respect what he's done. But one thing about the podcast is when you bring him on, you have to understand it's tricky. I actually was gonna have him on, and his grandparent, I think, died the day that was recorded, or the couple of days before. So obviously we were scheduled, and at that point, I was in the off season shortly before the season started, and then the season started, and it was hard to just get him, mid season with all the work he does.
Right.
But it's one of those things where you just like, you have to be on your toes. 'Cause shortly after that, he was on the Dark Waters kayak fishing with Josh Smith, and it's one of those things like. To try to keep that man on topic is not easy.
Right.
And you can lose control of your podcast real easily. And it's a bad look. Whether you agree what he's saying or not, it's a bad look. It looks bad when you as a podcast host are not controlling the show. Even if nothing's being said wrong, it transmits like, yeah, this guy lost control of the show now. It's Chad Hoover's podcast.
Right. Yeah.
You don't want that. As a podcaster, you don't want that. But you have to be aware, to keep Chad. It's not an easy task to keep Chad Hoover on. This is on point. And again, I'm not dishing on him on everything. Like I said, I total respect for what he's done, and I agree with Ryan Lambert. Mount Rushmore, the first name that should be there is Chad Hoover. What he's done is done. Yeah, it is. It's a challenging and intimidating to have him on the podcast.
He is a big personality. That's and some people are obviously going to love him, and just as many are going to hate that. But either way, it's going to be entertaining. But like you said, if you have a topic that you want him to talk about, it's definitely hard to rein him in and keep him to that. Because
I laughed so much at the one with the Josh Smith, man. That was so funny. If you ever, for those out listening, go to Josh Smith podcast. I don't know he's not recording.
Yeah, he kind of took a break, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he took a break. He disappeared from the face of this earth. I've been texting him and messaging him like, dude, how you doing, man? I'm worried about you. But he hasn't even replied. Usually he replies to my messages. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of like concerned about him. Anybody that knows what Josh Smith is doing, keep me updated, man. I love that guy. He's the one who got me into podcasts, by the way. I've said that enough on my podcast. But yeah, man, it just went off, and I felt bad for Josh. Kind of his whole intro for that podcast was an apology for what you were about to listen.
Uh,
It was definitely not politically correct or anything like that. It was Chad Lewis' opinions, whether you liked it or not, and not sweetened by any means of the imagination. So it was a good show. So if out there, go check it out. Go check out Dark Waters. It was
Definitely.
I think it was last year.
he gives that warning a lot. I know when Jay Karshman was on there, he did the same warning. Just so you know, this is how the conversation is probably going to go. Be prepared. So.
Yeah, I love Jay Karshman having on the podcast. I need to bring it on. That's one guy that I always hope to bring every year. I don't know how many years I'll be doing this, but I constantly want Jay Karshman on the podcast. Another person who gets a lot of love and a lot of slack for his personality.
Yep.
I like the guy. I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but I think he's cool.
He's helped me out so much,
Yeah.
and like I said, he's close to me, so he actually told me,
Great dude.
if you want to do, I told him, I'm going into this tournament, I'm going up against these people. He's like, oh, you want to beat those guys? This is how you do it. And I almost pulled it off, for a noob to go in there and, almost pull off beating some of the bigger sticks in my area. It just tells you the quantity and quality of information he gave me. It was just amazing, So hats off to him. He'll tell you, I'll share this information with anybody. I want to see people succeed. So that and yet I've never had him on my podcast. So I reached out to him just probably 2 weeks ago. And, after I talked to a few of the other local guys, and I'm like, I need to have you on here. So I think
He'll talk about jackhammers. He'll talk your ear off about jackhammers. Anything and everything you want to learn about jackhammers.
And one thing I learned from watching his videos is just how many casts he makes. And it's not bomb casts either. He's just hitting the bank, hitting the bank, hitting the bank. And almost like, each cast takes 10 seconds, but and I started kind of mimicking that at times and definitely saw my, catch rate climb. So, because before I would just figure, the longer it's in the water, the probably better chance I have. So I would bomb cast that jackhammer as far as I could throw it, and then bring it back to me where he's just kind of hitting structure or targeting areas more. So rather than try and make one huge cast, he makes 10 casts in that time that I would have made one long cast. So
I think that's one of the most underrated aspects of our learning, because I think most of us, get that level of get that testosterone going. Like, we want to bomb this thing out there, and it's usually not a good idea.
Right.
It's better to have accuracy than distance, honestly, unless we're talking about crankbaits, and even that, you're probably better off with accuracy than distance. But yeah, man, when I started, it's like, oh yeah, let's bomb it out there.
Right.
I want to feel like a guy here and bomb it out. We all love power fishing and all that. And as you grow, you're like, you know what? Less is better sometimes in that aspect. You don't need to bomb it out. You just need to place it where it needs to be.
Right.
And I've learned that too. It's just like, not about bombing. It's just placing it where it needs to be. One thing that I don't learn about chatterbaits and jackhammers is I used to just burn them. And I've had a couple of times where throw it, I'm burning them, and I had to stop to kind of mid retrieval to kind of position my kayak because the wind is moving me. I stop. Naturally, the chatterbait falls to the floor. I position myself and I start really back up, and boom, I get a hit out there. It happened a couple of times because I'm an idiot. Then realize, you don't have to burn it all the time. Again, less is better. Sometimes you work it like a jig, drag it on the bottom. Let it hit structure. There's different ways, and I've learned so much about just paying attention when you're on the water. Nothing can substitute time on the water, really. YouTube, podcast is gonna help, and it's gonna help you put two and two together, right? Because sometimes you go through things that you don't know why it's working, but then you listen to the Bass Fishing for Noobs podcast, talk about that, and you realize, oh, that's why it's working. So it goes hand in hand. But just listening to podcasts, watching YouTube, it's not gonna make you. It's going to help you, but it's not going to make you a great angler. It's a combination of putting in what you learned to what you listened and putting it together.
Right. I think back to when we did the Pal and Finn head-to-head tournament, and we had Pal and Finn hosts going head-to-head against each other
Yeah,
for
I
like.
was fun to watch. I
We
wasn't
need to
there,
do
but
that again. That was fun. But I was moderating when Brian Schiller went up against somebody, and I can't remember who he was going against. But I remember asking him, what are you throwing? And he's like, oh, I'm throwing a jackhammer. And I noticed he was like yo-yoing it. He'd let it drop and then bring it
that
up,
was
let it drop.
Dustin Nichols, I think.
Okay. And
Did he lost, or was it Dustin or Susie? Because
I don't
no, he
know, but
lost against Susie.
I know it was Brian though that was doing it because I remember
Oh,
asking
okay.
him. I was like, Brian, are you yo-yoing that jackhammer? He's like, shh, almost like, oh crap, you weren't supposed to notice that. He's like that, and then he told me later like that was really working for him at that point, and I started playing around with that with my jackhammers, and noticed I got more bites doing that too. So, that's kind of the way I learn is by watching other people and seeing what works. Now, the big caveat with that is, no two fishermen are the same. So what works
Yeah.
for somebody might not work for you. But in that particular instance, it was something I never would have thought of trying. And sure enough, when I started messing around with it was productive for me. So
I remember you being the host, and it was Ryan Lambert again, not Ryan Lambert, Ryan Milford against Josh Smith.
Josh,
And
yep,
Josh, being Josh, pulls the middle finger, and Ryan's like, What did Josh says? He says you're number one. I cannot stop laughing. He's like, oh yeah, Josh says you're number one.
that was funny. They were both struggling so much too. Josh looked miserable because it was like freezing for him wherever he was.
Yes.
He was like bundled up, like you could barely see his
I
face.
remember.
And they were both struggling to catch fish, and I felt so bad. But yeah, that was an interesting time. So
Yeah, I brought it up in the chat, like, let's do it again, and it was like, we don't talk about Fight Club here. Like, I was like, all right, I guess we're not doing it.
no, I know.
Everybody's like, no, I hated it. I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, it was towards the end. I think we did too much of it, like
Yeah.
because it just went on for a long time. So at first it was awesome, but I just want my rematch because I feel like I've learned a ton more since where I was.
Who do you lost to?
I went up against JP first, and neither of us caught a fish. So then we did.
I remember that.
Another shootout, and he ended up catching one fish and beat me. And then as soon as we stopped filming, I caught 3 fish. Like I was just trying way too hard, and so I feel like I could do better or if we did it again. But we'll see. Maybe we can,
Me and Ryan did a one-on-one because we were both going to be on the water. It was like, let's do a one-on-one for the paddle and fin, kind of like, get those algorithms going, all that. I beat him, of course. I think he caught 1. I caught 3. So it was a good time.
No, every time I think I'm gonna go out and catch fish, I don't catch as many. And then the times where I think, oh, this is gonna be the worst day ever, then I light it up. So those are the days that I leave my video camera at home, and the days where I think, oh, this is gonna be awesome. The weather's like perfect. It's like slightly overcast and it's not crazy windy. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a perfect day. It should be lights out, and then I'll bring my camera and record the whole time and catch like 3 fish, and then the times I'm like, oh, it's going to be windy but bright and sunny all day, I'm going to just leave the camera at home, and then I can't stop catching fish. So
that's the interesting part. I think the best days, the best weather days, are probably the worst days for fishing.
Right.
Like sunny, no clouds in the sky with no wind. Forget about it.
Yep.
Just throw a Senko and. If that's fun, because that's not fun. I know catching fish is fun, but it's like you're throwing Senkos and drop shots all day. It's I don't want to be 8 hours doing that, but that's what's gonna work. So
right on Bluebird skies sometimes, Yep.
But anyways, man, I've had you on for almost an hour, so I know you've had a long day at work, so I appreciate it. You taking the time being on the podcast. What do we got forward to looking forward to Bass Fishing for Noobs this year? What are your plans? Any segments you're already thinking about? Any guests you're hoping to bring in?
I just finally got in touch. I was talking to Alex Rudd about his partner, Benjamin Nowak. Have you heard him on Alex Rudd's podcast? So I just got him. Got in contact with him, and he said he wants to come on. We're going to be talking about drop shotting with him because he's like a drop shot guru apparently. So that was one of the requests when Brad Hicks put out, hey, what is somebody, or let us know some ideas for episodes. That was something that came up a few times, was drop shotting for smallmouth specifically. So I went and found, tried to find the guru on that, and it turned out that Benjamin Nowak was one of those guys. So he's coming up. I'm trying to think who else. I still haven't had Christine Fisher on. I'd like to talk to her. Who is the California guy?
Sean Lemon?
That's
Shane?
one.
Not Sean.
Shane Lemon. No, not the guy of the Bass Thumbs. He's the Bass Thumbs guy, right?
He's one of our co-hosts.
Yeah, no.
You forgot about
I
him?
wouldn't mind. We always did a thing where we'd interview each host, and he's one that we haven't interviewed yet. So I definitely need to get him on. But
definitely.
Why am I drawing a blank? He's a big YouTube guy.
Greg Blanchard.
Yes, and
he was just on Shane Lemon's first.
I know, and I'm like, that's cheating. He's a California guy. No wonder he got him. But that's another person that I'm working on getting on too, because I'm like, he has a ton of knowledge, and definitely somebody I'm looking forward to get on. And anybody who's listening to this, if you have ideas, definitely let me know. If you want to learn something, I'll learn right along with you. Just let me know, and I'll track down a guest that knows a crap ton about it, and we'll get them on.
So let me ask you this: is Alex Rod coming to your show or Nowak?
Nowak. Alex has already been on. He was on.
Alex Rod has already been here. I haven't seen it.
He was. Episode. Yep, he was on the Noobs show back when Ryan and I were both doing it. It was a while ago.
I missed that one.
I'm trying to remember what all he talked about, but I know I think it was Ned rigs, and I can't remember. But he's
also a great angler, great content creator. That's another guy. When I started, I would ask him questions, he would answer. I really want to bring him on my podcast because when he started, he was with Old Town. It was funny because he was Old Town. He's promoting Old Town, but he was batching on Hobie all the time, and I would get pissed off of watching these YouTube channels. Like, why is he? I just bought a Hobie Outback. Why are you bashing it? I just spent $2,500 on it. Please stop. And now he's with Hobie. I'm like, wait a minute. I got to bring him on my podcast to talk about this. This is sweet. This is sweet. I mean, this is, for me, that's like, oh, now you're with Hobie after you talk smack about their drive?
Sweet redemption right there, yeah.
Yeah. No, but he's a great content creator. He has a great podcast as well. And it's another guy that I messaged him, and he's actually answered and when I have questions. So he's a great content creator.
You can tell, I mean, he's a teacher by trade, and you can tell because it comes through in the way he presents information. He knows how to teach people, and that's what I love about his podcast.
So yeah, definitely. I know you're not a big social media guy, and that's one of the things that I love about your podcast. Because I know when you're a big social media guy or are trying to grow a social media, sometimes you have to how do you call this? Compromise. You have to talk about stuff that you don't necessarily want to talk about, but you have to do it because you have social media commitments. What I love about your show is you're not really a social media guy. So there's no string attached to what you do as Bass Fishing for Noobs. So anybody that's listening knows that what you're saying is not to promote anything because you're not really interested in all that thing. Not that you wouldn't want a sponsor. I'm sure you would. Anything that makes us, help us not make this as costly as it is. It's nice.
Right.
But I do appreciate that I think when, the integrity of it, that you're just focusing on teaching people, not just what you learned, but what experts, quote unquote experts or tournament anglers have learned and bring their opinions to the show along with yours. So anybody that's out there listening, Bass Fishing for Noobs, what is it? Every Monday morning, right?
Our show airs Monday morning. Yep. Start off the week with us, and, then you have the rest of the lineup that follows. But yeah.
Awesome, man. That's exciting. I'm looking forward to what you're going to bring this year, as always. Thank you for coming to the show, Sean. I really appreciate it. It's always an honor to have you on.
Keep up the good work, too, man. I love listening to your show. I mean, hearing the backstories of some of those people. I mean, Catherine Field, the show you did with her.
Dude, that
still resonates with me. That was amazing, And that's what I love about what you do is you get to the heart of the story, Anybody can talk. All these guys fish, all the people we talk to fish. So you're going to hear a lot of that. But the stuff that you get to when you dig in deep like that, that's the stuff that you don't get to hear about on other podcasts and stuff. And that's what like I think people love about your show is that you get to those parts of the story. So
I appreciate the kind words, and that's the for those out there listening. That's the beauty of Paddle and Fin. This is Paddle and Fin is to me not just the best kayak fishing podcast. Respect to KBN, Smalley Talks, on all those great podcasts. I forgot his name. Hayes from Tackle Talk.
Andrew Hayes. Yep, I
Andrew
love his
Hayes,
too.
another great.
Yep.
But what I love about Paddle and Fin is the network. You know, you got my show where I talk about, you know, content creators and tournament anglers and talk about their life and how kayak fishing fits into them. Bass Fishing for Noobs. We got Jimmy who does it, and Drew Gregory who does an amazing job of breaking down tournaments as good or as better as anybody else. And we have the OG show, which is kind of like turning into, which is what I like more. I like what Brian is doing with the OG show. It's just a gang getting together and we take turns of being on the show and talk about hot topics. So I think the OG show is even better now than it was with Jay Randall and Brian Shield, obviously the founder, the OG of Paddle and Fin. That's on Thursdays. On Wednesdays, I think we have Fridays is the OD show. Thursdays is the Reel Down with Jimmy and Drew, or Wednesdays? One of those two.
Final cast is on Thursdays, I think.
Final cast is on Thursdays, so Jimmy and Drew are on the Reel Down on Wednesdays. Thursdays, which is another great episode. Very charismatic. Brad Higgs, Joshua Trash Panda. I love the chemistry they both have. Both great dudes, great personalities, great anglers, and they break down techniques. They break down product reviews.
Yep.
With no ties either. That's what I love about them. They're not tied to anybody. They just do honest reviews. Brad Higgs does, and I think it's coming up the worst baits or the worst products. So that goes to show you he's not afraid of losing a sponsorship possibility. Shane Lamont with California guys. So we're gonna have California content, which should, contrary to popular opinion on some other podcasts, people in California do fish. There's a lot of great anglers out there. No disrespect to other people's opinions, of course, but Shane Lamont, Bass Fishing for Bass Fishing Thumbs.
Yes,
that's going to be every other Thursdays too.
Yep.
Who are we missing? Oh, we got Chris Lywak. I think I got his last name right this time.
Slivka.
He does the Slivka.
Slivka.
Chris. I don't know how many times this guy Chris is gonna forgive me for saying his last name wrong. He does, the mindset, which I love because it kind of breaks down the mindset too. Which I think it's 50% of the battle, if not more. JP, which is off the water. If you're going to a tournament and you want to check out what spots are good over there, you bring your family, go check out JP's podcast.
Doo-doo and the saltwater. Yep.
Saltwater with Dustin Nichols. God, Dustin Nichols is not just a great dude. He's a great angler too, man.
Oh my gosh.
I've fished with Dustin Nichols on freshwater, and that guy's a hammer. I can't imagine how good he is on saltwater.
Yeah.
He is. I'm telling you.
He just knows how to fish. Like when we went to Dale Hollow, he was the one who caught the fish, and I'm like, "You're the saltwater dude. What are you doing coming here?"
No, he's
showing up all of us freshwater guys. But
I fished with him once, and it was an eye-opening experience. And then, of course, we have to talk about
Brad Hurlboss.
Feather and Fur, Brad Hurlboss. Every other Sunday, he does the hunting episode. So a lot of great stuff, man.
Yeah, that's a part of kayaking that I never even thought of. I'd heard that people did it, but I never understood it until I started listening to his show and actually seeing how that's possible. It definitely, it sounds really interesting. I haven't hunted for a while, but definitely might get it back into it now, hearing that.
And the thing about Brad Hurlboss that I really enjoy is, we all gone through that. We start off and we're kind of shy and timid and all that. And to see Brad Hurlboss progressing as a podcast, and I'm not saying because I think I'm a better podcaster or that I think I'm great at podcasting. I really don't. But just watching him progress as a podcaster, and every show he seems to get better and better at this. So it's if you're into hunting, go check out Feather and Fur with Brad Hurlboss every other Sunday or Saturday. I can't remember. We have so many shows.
And yeah, and
He's
he's another one that, the passion in what he does, and
yes.
it shines through like crazy. So, props to you, Brad. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, man, we love having you on. Everybody, big family. So
Oh, I
again,
love our podcast family, man.
it
It's a
is
great group of people.
definitely is. So, Sean, we've been saying goodbye for like the last 15 minutes. I haven't had a chance to uh, give you shout outs. So go ahead, give you your shout outs, man.
Oh man, I just thanks to my paddle and fin family. I love you guys, and the other, I don't really have any sponsors. Like you said, I'm not opposed to it, but I just haven't really dug into that opportunity yet. So my sponsors are the people who are, the sponsors of paddle and fin. So, you know, uh, Jig Masters, Cody's, always been an awesome guy to me. So check out his stuff, and I'm starting to really get into the Yak Gadget stuff. I keep filling up my kayak. Can you hear me? Yeah,
You know what? I had my chair. I put myself on mute because my chair is squeaking a lot.
gotcha. But yeah, Yak Gadget. I've been doing. I just got I replaced my Anchor Wizard with the Yak Gadget one, and I love it. So definitely check out those guys. High quality stuff. That I have the crate now. I have the the rod holders that sit off the side of your kayak. That's been like a game changer for me. So, um, and I'm not sponsored by any rods. I love my St. Croix rods. I'm slowly working on replacing all my rods to those. Although Brian still owes me one Douglas rod. I ordered one through him, and I just haven't met up with him yet. So I have a frogging rod, a heavy flipping rod that I ordered from him. So I'm looking forward to trying that out and seeing what the hype about Douglas is all about.
The only thing I would order with Brian Schiller is death because you'll never get it.
Hey, I'm still waiting for my catch board.
Yeah, still waiting for my catchboard.
When I
He's
first
gonna-
started, they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll get you this awesome catch board with the paddle and fin logo on it." And
yeah.
here we
Whatever.
are, 2 years later, and no. But all kidding aside,
He's gonna be so pissed off about this too.
Brian,
He's
I love you,
probably
man.
banging on his desk right now, listening to editing this, and I'm like, I'm gonna get this idiots. They're fired. We love you, Brian.
We just know the buttons to push.
Yeah, we know.
Cool, man.
It's easy.
Yeah, and I guess thanks to my wife for putting up with all my shenanigans and letting me go fishing as much as I do. So,
Gotta thank the ladies, man.
yep.
All right, Sean. Man, thank you. Appreciate it for filling in. I love talking to you. I love having you on the podcast. So I appreciate taking the time, man. For those out there listening, this is going to be the last episode for Bass Kayak and Beers this year. We'll kick it off next year. We're going to take a break. If you're listening on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I think we end with Dustin Nichols on Sunday. That's going to be the last episode. So
Yep.
if you're listening on Tuesday, don't forget Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and Sunday is going to be episodes, and then that's it. So if you're going to be on the water, wear your PFDs. If it's cold, make sure you layer up. And again, I can't say this enough. If you're going to be on the water, drink responsibly. If you're going to drink, if not, even better. But have a great time.
Cool.
Peace out, everyone.
Good night, guys.
Sean,